The galaxy had many stories. Some were told as legends in the marketplaces of alien worlds, some whispered in war councils, and some were forbidden to even mention. Among these forbidden tales, one story always returned: the story of the sleeping humans. For generations, the empires of the stars believed humanity was gone. The Earth was marked on maps as a dead world, a relic of an old age. Traders who flew too close to its orbit spoke of silence, of blackened cities under clouds of dust, and of strange signals that flickered and died. None dared to land, for it was said the planet itself carried a curse. Yet deep beneath those ruins, in caverns carved by forgotten machines, humanity was not gone. They were waiting. The first discovery came by accident. A small crew of alien explorers, scavengers more than heroes, found the hidden vaults. Their ship had followed a fading distress signal, one too old to make sense. What they found instead was a structure unlike any they had seen. Steel doors sealed by codes no alien language could read. The walls hummed with ancient power, still alive despite centuries of silence. The youngest of the explorers, a pale-skinned alien with trembling hands, leaned close to the glowing symbols. "This is no ruin," he whispered. "It is a prison." His captain shook his head. "No prison keeps the guards outside. Whatever is inside, it sleeps," and he was right. Rows upon rows of chambers lay hidden, stretching for miles under the earth. Transparent lids covered each chamber, and beneath them lay figures that looked almost like the explorers themselves, yet different, taller, sharper. Their muscles seemed carved from stone, their faces carried both calm and fury. These were the humans, preserved in perfect silence, eyes closed as if lost in dreams. The crew argued in fear. To touch the machines was madness. To wake the sleepers was worse. But curiosity is a dangerous fire, and greed an even stronger one. Ancient legends spoke of the power humans once had. They had turned fleets to ash, had fought wars without mercy, had bent weapons with their bare hands. If even a fragment of that power could be stolen, the crew would be rich beyond measure. The youngest explorer pressed his hand against the controls. The old machine responded. Lights flickered, alarms whispered in a language none of them knew, and one chamber hissed open. The sound echoed like a storm. Cold mist rose, swirling around the figure inside. The alien crew stepped back, hearts pounding. The first human awoke. His eyes opened slowly. They glowed not with light, but with something colder, memory. His chest rose with a long, steady breath, as though centuries of waiting had ended with that single inhale. The explorers expected confusion. They expected weakness. Instead, the man sat upright with a calmness that shook them more than any scream could. His gaze moved from face to face, studying the aliens who had disturbed his rest. His voice was deep, raw, yet steady. "Who dared to wake us?" The words were not shouted. They were not filled with anger. They were worse. They were calm, as if a storm had just spoken in a whisper. The aliens stumbled back. Their leader tried to speak, but no words came. The young one who touched the controls shook in terror. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to move. The human rose from the chamber. Every step echoed through the cavern. His presence filled the air like a weight, pressing against the explorers' chests, making it hard to breathe. Though he was unarmed, they felt as though every weapon in the galaxy was aimed at them. He looked around the cavern. His eyes stopped at the endless rows of chambers where his kind still slept. The mist rose around him, painting his body in pale light. "They will wake," he said quietly, as if speaking to himself. "All of them." One of the explorers finally found his voice. You cannot. The galaxy has changed. It does not need you." The human turned his gaze upon the speaker. For a moment, silence ruled. Then the human smiled, a thin, cold smile that carried no warmth. "The galaxy," he replied, "has forgotten. But we have not." The explorers knew then why the legends called humans war gods. Not because they were immortal. Not because they were divine. But because they carried war in their very blood. And now someone had dared to wake them. The chamber lights began to flicker. More machines stirred. One after another, other pods hummed. The silence that had lasted for centuries was breaking. The captain of the alien crew shouted for retreat. They ran toward their ship, their footsteps echoing against stone. But even as they fled, the sound followed them. The hiss of more chambers opening. The steady breaths of more humans waking from their long slumber. Above the ruins, the alien ship lifted off in panic. The crew swore never to return. Yet deep inside they knew the truth. It was too late. The war gods were awake, and the galaxy, for the first time in centuries, would remember fear. The alien crew fled into the stars, but what they left behind could not be undone. The first human, now awake, walked slowly through the cavern. His breath came steady, his eyes burned with focus, and his silence spoke louder than any war cry. Around him, the machines responded as if they had been waiting only for his return. Lights pulsed, alarms sang in languages long forgotten, and more pods began to release their mist. The man placed his hand on the nearest chamber. Inside, another human stirred, a woman with sharp features and hair that floated in the freezing air. Her eyes opened, and in them shone the same ancient weight. She stepped out with no hesitation, as though centuries of sleep were no more than a blink. The two looked at each other and exchanged no words. Yet the air carried their understanding. They were not alone anymore. One chamber after another came alive. Men and women stood, their bodies still strong, their minds heavy with memory. They stretched, not like fragile beings waking from slumber, but like soldiers returning to the field after a long watch. Each of them carried the same fire in their gaze. The first man raised his voice again, calm but powerful. "Our silence is broken. The galaxy will hear us once more." Far away in the high towers of the Galactic Senate, signals began to arrive. Reports from scouts broke in messages filled with static and terror. Words repeated again and again, "Humans awake, humans awake." At first the senators dismissed it as rumor. Old ghost stories had returned before, and always they were nothing. But then came the transmission from the scavenger crew, voices choked with fear. They spoke of chambers, of figures rising from mist, of eyes that carried storms. The chamber fell into silence before erupting in panic. Some shouted for immediate action, to send fleets to Earth before the awakening spread. Others demanded caution. One senator, older than the rest, leaned forward with trembling hands. His voice cracked as he spoke. "You do not understand," he whispered. "They are not awakening. They are returning." For he remembered what the younger ones had forgotten. The humans had not been defeated in battle. They had not fallen to weakness or plague. They had chosen silence. They had built their vaults with their own hands. And when they vanished from the galactic stage, it was not surrender, it was a warning. On Earth, the awakening spread like fire. Caverns lit up across continents. Pods opened. Mist filled the air, and footsteps echoed in stone halls that had waited too long. Humans walked out into the ruins of their world and looked at the sky above. Stars shone there, the same stars they had once crossed with fleets of iron and fire. The first woman spoke, her voice steady. "The galaxy forgot us, but we remember it." They remembered the wars. They remembered the betrayals, the alliances broken, the planets that had turned against them out of fear. Every scar was written in their memory, carried like scripture. And though centuries had passed, nothing had faded. In orbit, old machines came alive. Human satellites, long thought dead, opened their eyes. Signals spread between them, forming a web of awakening. Deep beneath the ocean, sealed hangars cracked open, releasing warships whose hulls had not seen light for ages. Rust flaked away, systems roared to life, and engines ignited. The humans moved with purpose. They did not panic. They did not question. It was as though they had always known this day would come. Their slumber had not weakened them. It had sharpened them. The galaxy, however, was not prepared. Fleets scrambled. Messages flew between empires. Some called for peace, others for immediate destruction of Earth. But no one could deny the fear spreading like wildfire. The name of humanity, once thought buried in dust, now returned to every tongue. The first man stood at the edge of the cavern, looking at the horizon where the ruins of old cities lay. His voice was low, almost gentle. "Wake them all," he commanded. And so they did. The ground trembled as more vaults broke open across the earth. From deserts, from mountains, from frozen wastelands, humanity returned. They did not roar with triumph. They did not cry with joy. They only looked upward toward the stars that had betrayed them once, and their silence carried a promise. The galaxy had stirred the war gods from their sleep, and now there would be no turning back. The Senate's arguments ended in fear. Words no longer mattered. Within hours, the order went out. Fleets were to move on Earth, surround it, and crush any attempt of human return. They believed that decisive force would stop the whispers from turning into fire, yet their decision carried the desperation of children throwing stones at a storm. Across the black of space, fleets assembled. Cruisers, carriers, and dreadnoughts, each bearing the banners of alien empires gathered in Earth's orbit. Their hulls glittered under the sun, their weapons armed, their commanders repeating to themselves that this was only a precaution, that the legends of humanity were exaggerated. But fear gnawed at them. Inside Earth's vaults, the humans stood ready. Not a single order was shouted, yet their movements carried unity. They walked among the ruins as if every step followed an invisible plan, a script written centuries earlier. At the shores of a broken sea, a colossal gate split open. Out of the waves rose an iron warship, larger than any the aliens had seen, its hull scarred with old battles, its weapons still sharp. It was not new, yet its presence was heavier than an entire fleet. Alien scouts saw it first. Their reports trembled with disbelief. They still have ships, ancient but alive. The first strike came quickly. Alien cruisers moved in formation, their commanders confident that age had rusted human steel. They fired beams of white light, torrents of plasma meant to melt through armor. The warship absorbed the fire in silence. Its hull burned, groaned, yet it held. Then, with a slow turning of its cannons, the ship replied, "One shot. That was all." The beam tore through the void like a blade. An alien cruiser vanished in a bloom of fire. The shockwave rippled across the formation. The other ships broke rank, fear filling their veins. No one had expected such power from something that should have been dust. On Earth, more hangars opened. From mountains and deserts, war machines took flight. Sleek fighters rose into the sky, engines screaming. Their wings cut through the clouds as they joined the ancient warship. It was not just one vessel, it was an awakening fleet. Alien commanders barked orders. "Regain formation." And they are only a few, but their words carried no conviction. Each new human vessel that emerged carried a weight of terror that no numbers could balance. The first clash unfolded above the Earth. Alien ships swarmed, firing torrents of energy, filling the void with light. Human ships answered with silence and precision. Every shot they took landed with surgical cruelty. Where alien fleets relied on overwhelming fire, humans used patience, striking at weak points, cutting through lines, making entire wings collapse with a single maneuver. In the chaos, one alien admiral whispered the words he should not have spoken. "They are not fighting as if they just woke. They are fighting as if they never stopped." And he was right. Humans moved with a rhythm that no slumber could erase. Their silence was not confusion, it was focus. Their calm was not weakness, it was control. The first man, now standing at the command deck of the ancient warship, watched the stars with steady eyes. Around him, humans operated in silence, their hands flying over controls, their eyes locked on screens of shifting light. No one asked what to do. They already knew. The alien fleets began to break. Ships turned to flee, but retreat was no salvation. Human fighters chased them with merciless speed, cutting down engines, leaving wreckage to drift in fire. The void became a graveyard, lit by explosions and silent screams. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy saw what humanity meant when they were awake. Not gods in golden light, not legends of mercy, but war itself given form and flesh. On distant worlds, news of the battle spread faster than light. Civilizations that had never seen a human whispered the words as if they were poison. They are awake. They are fighting again. Some denied it, claiming the stories were lies. Others trembled, remembering the records of old wars where planets had burned under human fleets. Back on Earth, the first clash ended with silence. Alien fleets shattered, their remains drifting like dust around the planet. Human ships moved among the wreckage, gathering weapons, repairing hulls, readying for the next wave. The first woman stood beside the man on the command deck. Her voice was calm. "They will send more. Greater fleets. Entire empires." The man nodded. His eyes never left the stars. "Then let them come." In that moment, the galaxy changed. No longer was Earth a dead world. No longer were humans forgotten. They had risen, and with their rising came a promise written not in words but in fire. The war gods had returned, and the galaxy would tremble once more. The wreckage of alien fleets still drifted above Earth like broken stars. Flames of dying ships flickered in the void, and silence spread across the galactic channels. No one wanted to be the first to speak of what had happened, yet no one could ignore it. The name of humanity, once buried in dust and legend, now filled every council hall and war chamber. On the capital world of the Galactic Senate, Panic cracked the air like thunder. Messages arrived in floods, each report more chilling than the last. Witnesses spoke of ancient warships rising from the oceans, of humans fighting with ruthless calm, of fleets shattered in minutes. Admirals who had once laughed at the myth now trembled as they replayed the footage. The sight of one human warship cutting down entire squadrons burned into their minds. Some senators shouted for peace. If they wished to destroy us, they would have already done it. We must send envoys, offer alliances, remind them the galaxy has changed. Others shouted for war. Crush them before the vaults open wider. Burn the earth before they spread. But beneath their arguments lay the same truth. They were afraid. In the dark corners of the galaxy, ancient records were opened again. Old histories written in secret revealed battles that most had forgotten. Whole empires once shattered in days, fleets scattered like sand before storms, worlds turned into fields of ash where no life grew again. The humans had not been conquerors in the way other species understood. They had been storms, sudden and merciless, and their silence had been the only reason the galaxy knew peace. On frontier planets, whispers grew. Children asked their elders about the sleeping war gods. Traders passed stories in hushed tones, warning that any ship seen near Earth would never return. Fear infected even those who had never seen a human face. Meanwhile, on Earth, the awakening continued. Vaults opened across continents, and more men and women stepped into the broken light. They did not rush. They did not stumble. They walked with the stillness of warriors who already knew what awaited them. Entire legions formed silently in the ruins of cities. War banners, untouched for centuries, unfurled in the wind once more. From the oceans rose carriers large enough to blot out the sky. From the mountains rolled machines of war, armored giants that shook the ground with each step. Human technology was old, yet it carried a strength that modern empires did not understand. It was built not only for war but for survival, designed by a species that had once fought each other with a fury unmatched by any alien race. In distant star systems, empires prepared. Fleets doubled their numbers, armies drilled in panic, and every broadcast warned of the human return. Yet among the soldiers a question spread like poison. If the legends were true, what hope did they have? One alien general, a veteran of countless battles, addressed his men with a heavy voice. Do not think of them as men. Think of them as storms. You do not stop a storm, you only survive it. His words were meant to steel their hearts, but instead they spread despair. The galaxy began to fracture. Some races whispered of surrender before the war even began. Others prayed that humans would stay on Earth and never rise beyond their planet. But everyone knew the truth. The first clash had been only a whisper. The storm was only beginning. In the Senate chamber, the oldest senator rose once more. His voice shook, but his words cut through the noise. Do you not see? We are already too late. We should not fear their fleets. We should fear their memory. Humans never forget, and they never forgive. On Earth, the first man stood aboard his warship, watching the stars through a cracked viewport. Around him, his people worked in silence, awakening systems that had not stirred in centuries. He spoke only once, but his words carried into every heart. They thought we slept because we were weak. They thought silence meant defeat. But we were only waiting. Now the galaxy remembers. Now they will learn what silence was hiding. And so the fear spread. From the smallest colony to the greatest empire, the galaxy trembled under a name that had been buried too long. Humanity had risen, and no one knew how to stop them. The stars burned with unease. Fleets patrolled every border, but no commander dared to move closer to Earth again. The first clash had shown the galaxy a truth that words could not deny. Humanity was not only awake, they were ready. Across the ruins of Earth, the silence of centuries ended. Vaults stood empty now, their sleepers walking beneath broken skies. The old cities, scarred by time, were alive again with human presence. Children of war gods stretched their limbs as if shaking off chains of ages. Their eyes reflected the same fire. Memory. In the oceans, titans of steel drifted toward the surface. Battleships scarred by ancient wars, their hulls stitched with old wounds, rose as if called by unseen hands. Their engines, dormant for generations, burned again with fire that shook the seas. Above them, swarms of fighters patrolled the skies, their trails painting lines of defiance against the stars. The galaxy watched, Every signal, every whisper, every transmission from Earth spread like wildfire. Soldiers in alien barracks refused to sleep. Senators trembled behind their polished speeches. Traders spoke of entire human fleets lifting into orbit, shadows blotting out the sun. Fear became a living thing, heavier than any fleet, sharper than any weapon. But the humans themselves did not rush. They moved with patience. They rebuilt their command halls, reignited their orbital defenses, restored their war codes. To outsiders, it seemed like ritual, as though humanity followed a prophecy written in the bones of their world. To the humans, it was simply preparation. The first man and the first woman stood at the edge of their command deck. Beyond the viewport stretched the graveyard of alien wrecks left from the first clash. Fires still glimmered in the void, silent reminders of what awaited all who challenged them. The woman spoke with calm certainty. They will come again. Larger fleets, entire coalitions. They will not stop until they have drowned Earth in fire. The man's gaze did not waver. Then they will learn what fire truly is. Elsewhere, empires argued and fractured. Some leaders demanded immediate destruction of Earth before the storm grew larger. Others counseled surrender, knowing resistance was hopeless. But none could agree, for fear divided them more than humanity ever could. Each waited for the other to move first, each too terrified to become the next wreck drifting above Earth. On hidden channels, secret voices spoke of alliance instead of war. Some whispered that perhaps humanity was not a threat, but a shield, that perhaps they could stand against darker forces in the galaxy. But such words were drowned quickly by the louder truth. Humans had returned, and their return carried the shadow of old vengeance. In distant corners of the galaxy, old monuments trembled. Planets once scarred by human wars bore scars that had never healed. Now their people remembered what those scars meant. Entire generations had lived without fear of humans. That time was over. Back on Earth, the awakening reached its peak. Vast armies stood assembled in silence. Their banners caught the wind, carrying the sigils of a people that had been gone too long. The air trembled with the weight of their presence, yet no one spoke. They did not need to. The humans looked upward toward the infinite stars. Their silence was not emptiness, it was judgment. The galaxy had disturbed their rest. Now the galaxy would answer. The first man raised his hand and the fleet stirred. Engines lit one by one, painting the night sky with fire. Warships, carriers, and titans rose from Earth's orbit, breaking free of their cradle. The sound of their departure was not thunder but something heavier, the return of a storm that had been waiting for too long. As the fleet moved into the void, transmissions echoed across the galaxy. A single message, repeated in every tongue, spread like a blade across the stars. We slept long enough. Now the galaxy will remember. Silence followed. No threats. No promises. Just the certainty of a truth that weighed heavier than any weapon. And so humanity returned. Not as a forgotten legend, not as a whispered story, but as the storm itself. The war gods no longer slept. The galaxy in its fear would learn again why it once trembled at the name of man.